Katipunan, radyo-katipunan, radyo-katipunan, radyo-katipunan. Sa The Blue Eagle kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay at tenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng kwela. Katipunero, sugod, todo sa kayod, dunong at tulog. Lipat na Blue Eagle, galing giting nagigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, katipunan, radyo, katipunan,
Tara na't simulan ng inyong umaga sa mga magagandang refleksyon tungkol sa ating buhay at pananampalataya. Kasama sina Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, Father J. Boy Gonzales at Father Nono Alfonso ng Kapisanan ni Jesus, Father Cali Llamado ng Manila Cathedral at Binibining Risa Singson Kaupeng ng Light of Jesus Community dito sa Kapit Pandasal sa Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Nick, late na naman. Ako si Risa Singson Kaupeng, book author at editor. Magkapit pandasal muna tayo. Kagaya mo ba yung younger self ko na nalulungkot tuwing darating ang Kwaresma? Kasi naman, panahon na nga ng pag-aayuno at abstinence, tapos kasagsagan pa ng init ng summer. Parang pinaparusahan ka talaga. Pero siguro, ang kailangan natin ay pagbabago ng perspektibo pagdating sa Lenten season. Madalas kong marinig sa ibang mga Katoliko, anong sacrifice mo para sa Lent? Ang iba sa kanila ay hindi kakain ng karne buong Kwaresma, o hindi kakain ng matatamis, o hindi magkakape sa loob ng 40 araw. Pero imbis na isipin natin kung ano ang maaari nating ilingan o iwasan, pwede kayang isipin natin kung ano ang maaari nating gawin o idagdag sa ating buhay? Halimbawa, sikapang magsimba ng mas madalas ngayong Kwaresma. Imbis na linggo lamang, kaya ba nating idagdag ang MWF o gawing araw-araw? O imbis na umiwas sa pagkain ng karne, baka naman pwede kang magpakain ng ilang mahihirap sa panahong ito? Paano natin maiaalay ang ating sarili sa iba sa mga praktikal na paraan gaya ng pag-aalay ni Kristo ng kanyang buhay para sa atin? Maging creative tayo sa ating pag-obserba ng Kwaresma upang ating mas maisabuhay ang diwa ng panahong ito. Tayo magdasal. Jesus, gamitin mo ako bilang isang Kristo sa aking mundo. Amen.
The Voice of the Blue Eagle, Radyo Katipunan 87.9.
Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan. The Voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay at tenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng pera. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, Katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero, sugod, todo sa kayod, tunong at tulong.
Palalimin ang kamalayan sa mga isyong napapanahon. Makisangkot at makiisa kasama ang Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan, ang social-political apostolate ng Kapisanan ni Jesus. Ito ang Kuwentuhang Bayan mula alas 11 ng umaga tuwing Biyernes dito lang sa Radyo-Katipunan 87.9 FM. Dahil naniniwala kami na posible ang isang mas mabuting lipunan at maaari itong simulan sa isang kwentuhan.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Actually, tanghali na. Medyo tapat na yung araw dito sa aming lugar. Sa inyo ba dyan, Karlo?
Oo, of course. And it's bright, hindi umuulan, no? So, ayan, good morning po sa ating listeners, mga katipunero at katipunera na sumusubaybay, no? Who continue to follow us and our program on a weekly basis, no?
Welcome po sa ating Friday episode ng Kuwentuhang Halalan dito sa Kuwentuhang Bayan sa Radyo Katipunan. Ako pong muli si Xavier Alvaran ng Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan at kasama ko po ang aking malapit na kaibigan na si
Karlo Abadines po, Party Advocacy Officer sa CEAP. Ayan. So, magkasama ulit tayo, Save, after a long while.
Yes, and actually kagabi lang di ba? Parang meron tayong kwentuhang halalan, di ba? At itong ating episode, Kwentuhang Halalan, episode ng CEAP at SLB ay particularly for Region 7 or Central Visayas. Actually, natuwa ako nung nalaman ko na ito yung maging episode today at mag-usap tayo kasi I remember dati ang SLB, naging area niya ang Cebu at ang Bohol para sa disaster rehabilitation programs. At yung unang pumasok nga ako sa SLB, yung pinakaunang area ko talaga, Karlo, ay Bohol. So talagang malapit sa akin yung Central Visayas, no?
Oh wow, exciting naman. Ako naman din, excited din ako. No? I was excited when I got, sabi ko, ako yung mag-host for Region 7 because I grew up in Cebu for quite some time. Mga 4 years, no, before nag-migrate, before my family migrated. So, I understand a bit of Cebuano. I wish I could speak Bisaya better. No? But maybe hopefully sa conversation baka mag-diffuse ng konti. Ganun ba? Yung ano, but yeah, I love Cebu. Lumabas suddenly yung hidden Bisaya powers. Ganun pala yun. No? But yeah, it's exciting and I hope to understand better, no? At least the concerns that are happening in regions.
And Karlo, SLB is going to Cebu next week. So parang magkakaroon tayo ng advanced conversations kung ano nga ba yung mga issue sa Cebu. So yun, and sa the rest of Region 7. So sa mga hindi pa nakakaalam, ang SLB po at ang CEAP ay nag-team up para sa ating programang Kwentuhang Halalan para sa Kwentuhang Bayan para pag-usapan natin yung mga importanteng issue ng bansa at lalong-lalo na yung particular sa mga rehiyon at sa mga lokalidad, sa mga probinsya, sa mga syudad, di ba, Karlo?
Yes, and this is the direction of the CEAP together with SLB because we understand, no, sana kung election, it's always personality, right? Like there's all these names, people are just talking about the candidates without really talking about the issues, right? Or the platforms. And for the longest time, SLB and CEAP, we always believe that we need to drive yung mga importanteng issue na kailangan solusyon ng mga politiko. It's not just about their names, but it is what kind of governance and what kind of platforms, no, they will actually bring to the front to solve critical issues of the people. And so that's why we have this program. No? So, well, of course, hindi naman kami experts ni SAVE, no, when it comes to Region 7. And so we invited very wonderful guests, no, to join us in this program. So I'll invite them now to the floor. No? So una, I want to invite Mrs. Rosalina Barton, currently the CEAP-CEPA Vice President and the CEAP Region 7 Council Secretary. Mag-hi naman po kayo dyan, Dr. Barton.
Hello, maayong buntag sa tanan. Good morning to all. I am privileged to be here this morning on behalf of Father Joel P. Oriesga, our CAP Region 7 GIP-G in charge. Nice meeting you all. Thank you.
Nice to hear. Thank you po, Dr. Barton. And of course, we also have a student representative, si Miss Ali Emmanuel Abellana, the Vice President for Internal Affairs of USC Pathways, a student of the University of San Carlos. Ayan. Say hi naman, Ali.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this privilege to provide a platform for students to share their own concerns for the election. Thank you so much.
Yeah, wonderful. And of course, last but not the least, we have also invited Miss Brenette Abrenica, currently the Director for External Relations and the Internationalization Office in the University of San Carlos. Ayan, Miss Brenette.
Maayong buntag sa tanan. For Xavier and Karlo, welcome to Cebu, welcome to Region 7, and the rest of your audience, your followers. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be part of this conversation.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so I think we've been able to introduce Save. Maybe we can already start with our discussion, no?
Unang-una, Carlo, nakilala natin yung guest natin, pero gusto ko pang malaman kung ano ba yung parang immediate na ginagawa nila. So if okay lang po, let's start with any one of our guests para magpakilala kung ano po ba yung particular na function na ginagawa niyo sa inyong opisina, ano po yung mga background niyo and experiences working in this particular office po. Anyone po, pwede mag-start?
Sige po, Dr. Barton, go po.
So once again, good morning. Hail Agostiniane. So this is the official cheer of the institution where I belong. So I'd like to greet the Kuwentuhang Halalan followers, our CAP Region 7 trustee, Father Narciso Cilian, the council members, the learners, parents, guardians, teachers, non-teaching staff, and administrators of CEAP member schools in Cebu and Bohol. I am a teacher and the principal of Academia de San Agustin, that's in Carmen, Cebu, northern part of Cebu. So my school is a member of the institution of CACOTCHE, that's the Cebu Archdiocesan Commission on Catholic Education, as well as ACSCS, Archdiocesan Catholic Schools of Cebu System. I am proud to say that I am an active member of CEAP. So I remember I've been participating in the face-to-face national conventions. So the last was in Iloilo and also in the online activities. Also, I am participating in CEAP Region 7 Council, as mentioned. Now I am the current secretary and also the assistant GIP-G in charge. I am also an officer in CEAP SEPA, that's the Cebu Elementary Principals Association, and a member of the CEAP SESPA, that's the Cebu Secondary Principals Association, and also in PAC. I am also actively participating because we are an ESC and VP member school. So I just want to thank CAP as well as SLB for this opportunity to share my experiences as well as the experiences of Region 7. So, if I would reflect and look back, the experiences during the time of the pandemic as an individual and as a region, now my heart is filled with amazement and in a way gratitude of how we have found ways in order to survive until now. So it's been 2 years after the pandemic, and how we were contented and happy despite all the restrictions. However, in the Region 7, aside from the difficulties that we have experienced caused by the pandemic, last December 16, we also have experienced the devastation of Typhoon Odette. So that made our life in Cebu and also in Bohol even harder. Now, so in fact, until now, even in my location in Carmen, we have difficulties also accessing to internet connection because the connection really is still now unstable. And even in Cebu and in Bohol, I have heard mostly, no, especially in Bohol, some places have no electricity yet, and they don't have also internet connection. Some of the members of our council cannot even join our meetings and contact us because of this limitation. Now, however, despite all this, no, I am always telling myself and also my friends, no, and other people whom I work with, nga laban lang. No, og ampo. So it's a Visayan term nga, laban lang. We have to be brave, we have to be courageous, and we have to pray. So personally, I just want to share with you what has inspired me, no, during this time of the pandemic and has sustained me also, and having that at least good mental health is my relationship, my engagement and affiliation to different organizations. So all the organizations that I have mentioned, they have inspired me and in a way has given me life, especially my family, because for many years, as a teacher and principal, it was only during this pandemic that I was able to spend good quality time now with my family, since our arrangement is work from home. So with that, I was more close to them. And with my forever friends also, because of all the restrictions, we were exchanging messages and sharing stories only online. And of course, other affiliations online. So all these experiences that I have, the webinars, professional developments, meetings, sharing of resources, and other particular practices that we have now, even virtually, I really cherish them. And for me, they are the reasons why I need to get up and in a way move on despite all these trials and difficulties. Parang sa Nescafe, para kanino ka bumabangon. So these are the reason for me to move on. So thank you so much. In due time, all will go well. Thank you.
Meron pang quote pa from Brenette Ben. Di ba? That was a beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Barton. No? It's really seeing both seeing lights amidst difficult shadows, no, that continue to confront us. Maybe we can hear naman, no, from Miss Ali, from the perspective of the youth sector and as a student. How are you? How has pandemic been for you also in the recent months?
Good morning po, everyone. Good morning sa viewers. I'm Ali Abellana. I'm a student from the University of San Carlos in my third year. Tapos I'm currently the Vice President for Internal Affairs in the USC chapter of Pathways. Just a background, organization namin, this organization tries to bridge the gaps in between Filipino students and tertiary education. So we try to encourage students, especially the youth, the young Filipino students, to pursue tertiary education. Currently, I mean, during the face-to-face na setup, our programs can often involve tutorials, developmental activities for younger students. We had alternative teaching modes involving, for example, play teaching and also storytelling. Pero ngayon na online lang, mahirap yung on-the-ground na work. So we had to find compromises, understandably for health protocol reasons. Tapos the university wants to first and foremost put the health of the volunteers first. So we had to find compromises. So instead of holding face-to-face sessions talaga para sa org namin, we're providing instead material support, for example, for their modular activities. Then for older students, we're trying to transition the activities na were once face-to-face to the online na setup. So we had online na classes, parang online classes talaga yung dating. So yung concerns, both sa beneficiaries namin for older students and students in University of San Carlos alike, parang same-same lang kasi online talaga yung setup. Tapos, currently, the on-the-ground work, yun yung sa beneficiaries namin. Pero sa members naman, kasi internal affairs naman talaga yung parang section ko, na ko-concern din ako kasi parang we as members na ano din na limit din yung capacity namin or like yung opportunities namin to learn outside the four walls of the classroom, kasi kung face-to-face pa sana yun, mas marami pa yung preparations na pwedeng gawin for face-to-face na program. So even our own members nalilimit din somewhat yung kanilang opportunities for growth inside the organization, but we are trying our best to find compromises for that in the online setup. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I'm not sure if I'm able to present all the perspectives of every student, but hopefully I'll be able to present a valuable perspective nonetheless. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you din, Miss Ali, no? Ramdam na ramdam ko yung concern and yung leadership niya as a student leader. And nag-surface both from sa sharing ni Miss Ali and ni Dr. Rosalina yung challenges ng pag-adapt talaga, no? Both from the teachers and admin side and the students, diba? And I think napaisip din ako sa sinabi kanina ni Dr. Rosalina when she talked about yung pag-adapt. Tapos ngayon nga, di ba, may shifts na to face-to-face and parang another sets of challenges ulit, di ba, to face sa education sector. Next naman natin papakinggan si Ma'am Brenette, and gusto ko rin malaman din yung perspective, di ba, ng mga bahagi ng school administrators kung paano sila nagko-cope, di ba? And ano yung mga challenges at kakaharaping challenges din nila sa panahong ito.
Okay, maraming
Miss
salamat. Yes po. Maraming salamat. First off, I'm actually wearing a number of hats when I present myself before this. Why a number of hats? Because aside from taking care of external relations and internationalization, I'm also a faculty member of the Department of Political Science. Previous to this position rather, I served as chair of that department, and previous to that position, community extension director, of which Pathways I'm very, very happy that Ali is here. We have not crossed paths before, but Pathways is one of the university's community extension organization. And we find that there is really hope for the education sector if we have students who are willing to help fellow students. So having those hats, various hats, and many others, the condition and the situation of the education sector had been very much challenged because of many things, personally and institutionally or professionally. At a personal level, I think people from Manila may have heard about Cebuanos being noted as kahigulo. In 2020, it was no less the president himself noting that Cebuanos going out of their homes amidst the surge, we are gahig ulo or matigas ang ulo namin. But for me, that is one important layer of truth and context that will have to give flavor to how we understand Cebu and the rest. Why do I point that out? Because that's a reality in our city. That's a reality in Cebu. And I think that's also a reality anywhere else in the country because of so much poverty and so much urbanization. And that is true to our students. We knew from the very beginning of the pandemic that our students were never prepared for online classes, no less teachers as well. We were never prepared to go online. We were never prepared in terms of our gadgets. We were never prepared of our connections. We were never prepared in terms of the setup of our homes. We had to convert some nooks and corners into office, into lecture corners and so on, because we don't have those facilities and capacities at the beginning. Institutionally, though, University of San Carlos had, I would like to suppose, similar with other schools and even basic education nila Dr. Barton, we had to make different adjustments from putting in place a learning management system that will ensure that none of our students are left behind. None of our teachers get to struggle with online classes. That's a major leap of faith for us. LMS, we never knew what it was. because we were very much a campus-oriented university, like many of us in the Philippines, putting in place the support units. Even if we don't have students in the campus, we don't have faculty and employees in the campus, but a robust support institution to cater to the needs of our faculty and our students alike. That's another leap of faith. Have we progressed so much in 2 years' time? For most, yes, but for some, not so much. There still are a lot of challenges that we have to face. But I think all of these realities and context put layer to how we look at our current context, and that is the election year. That is election 2022. And I really am very happy for this opportunity that we don't only talk about who to vote and the qualifications of our candidates as others are doing it, but really to put forward the issues and the different challenges that HEIs and SUCs actually face, but giving so much privilege and space to educational institutions that are private in character. Because maybe later I can share some of the very pressing challenges that seem to have been covered not only by COVID, but also by national policies and the like. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Brenette. And I think that already transitions us, no, to in a sense, this part of the conversation. Understandably, it has been reported already by many different groups that there is a learning crisis of some sort, no, happening in the Philippines. And compounded by that also is the difficulty of private schools in surviving during the pandemic, no? Lower enrollment in HEIs in the basic education sector. We've seen movements, no, to the public schools because in a sense it's free, no, and so when the pandemic happened, people lost employment, no, and I guess parents were kind of forced to move their children to the public schools where it was free, right? So maybe now I'll take this opportunity to ask Dr. Barton first and Ms. Brenette, and then later Save will ask Ali on student concerns, no? But for you, what kind of proposals would you want, no, our politicians to start addressing when it comes to the education sector for your region, right? So if you had the floor with the governor, with our Congress representatives, with our LGU leaders, what do you want to say, right? In terms of ito yung issue namin, and this is the kind of support that we would be needing. Maybe we can start with the thoughts first of Dr. Barton.
Thank you so much. So in line with education issues, so one that was pointed out is the ones that you have mentioned, declining and decreasing enrollment. So that's really one. However, in line with that, because majority of the students, especially of the elementary department, were moving to the public school. So that was really a problem. But in the high school and senior high school, at least, because there was a support, there's a support from the government through the PEAC, at least the number of enrollees in the high school and also in the senior high school with ESC and also VP, still in other schools, they have increase of enrollment. Now they have increase of enrollment, though I've heard in our conversation during CESPA meetings, there are only few, and they were even asked to share also their ways how they have also increased their enrollment. So with that, we are happy with the support of the government in line with that, for junior and senior. So maybe one is if that can also be extended. So with our government for whoever will be elected, if in the education aspect, they can also think of expanding it to the grade school and increasing also the amounts. So that would at least alleviate the problem of the private institutions of the decreasing enrollment. So I'm sure with that subsidy that the government will give to the students, we might increase our enrollment, and that would help the private schools. In fact, there are private schools really who are closing their schools because of minimal enrollees only or no enrollees at all. So we have even schools here in Carmen who have experienced that. So I think that's one. And another is to strengthen maybe the PPP, that's the public-private partnership, Now that the relationship with DepEd and also private institution, that it will become inclusive. So our complementarity now will be strengthened, because during the time of the pandemic, there was no financial assistance from the government. And of course, during also the pandemic, in the education aspect, there were several regulatory intervention that they were asking for us to subscribe, for us to submit episodes of unreasonable regulatory intervention that jeopardizes complementarity with public and private, with DepEd and maybe private institutions. So that's one also concern that we have heard from our partner private institution. So I think in line with financial matter for that enrollment, that's one. And on the side of the teachers also, because if the students are moving to the public schools, the teachers are also moving also to public schools, and not only public schools, but they are also moving out of the country. So transferring also abroad because of the vast disparity of salary and allowances. So in a way, if we are going to check with students and also with teachers, it is on the financial aspect during this time of the pandemic. So I think that's one thing that the government has to check. For the teacher who are teaching also the junior and the senior, there is no subsidy, but in the junior, there is a subsidy. So maybe they can also increase the subsidy for the teachers in the junior high school and expand it to senior. And once we will have also the program, the gospel program in the elementary, then I'm sure the other teachers also will enjoy the TSS. So that's one. Because of this problem of the decrease of enrollment, the different institutions are encountering really a problem of budget for salary increase. We cannot increase our employees, particularly the teachers, limited incentives also and other benefits that we can offer for those who are staying in the private schools because of limited enrollment. So it would imply limited budget also. And of course, in as much as the administration would like to give quality teacher education package, especially those who are really good, and the best teachers, but the limitation again is on that budget side. So maybe again an appeal to the leaders, that we will be electing, that they will look into this education concerns, aside from other concerns for that matter, on the content of our educative process. But so this is in line with enrollment, in line with teacher experiences. So far, maybe I will just limit on this two as of the moment, education issues. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Barton. It's really the problem of resource constraints on the side of private schools and what government can also do to support. Maybe I'd love to hear the thoughts also of Dr. Abrenica, on your thoughts then, maybe from a perspective also of the HEIs, on the side also of that. Yeah.
I think what is very much different from the perspective that I'll be carrying. Sa tertiary kasi, mas maraming challenges. For example, before the pandemic hit, we had to struggle with the education reform. And that's starting 2012. But the journey towards the education reform, cascading it down to basic education and reforming tertiary education is a whole lot of different business. And that means strengthening the research component, the community development component, community extension, the programs, how responsive the programs are, how globally competitive, as others call it, the program should be, and how much we are inviting international or foreign students to prefer schools in the Philippines. So that's a whole lot of different issue. Then another layer to that is the supposed competition of HEIs. These are the private higher education institutions and SUCs, or the state universities and colleges, because funds of government are actually going to SUCs. private higher education and institutions are left on their own to fend for themselves. So the preference, for example, of students who would like to get quality college education, tertiary education, if they don't really have so much resources to support themselves, they go to SUCs. And that is an enrollment fatality on the part of HEIs. So the education reform, we have been building on it, and then COVID came. So for me, the second issue is the COVID or the pandemic actually showed the vulnerabilities of schools in terms of capacity of our private higher education institutions to support their staff, to support their employees, and even students, because of course, schools are securing their own connectivity, their own infrastructure, but later on, students are crying already for support. Faculty are also crying for support. So you have a lot of fronts to cover. Funds are dwindling in higher educational institutions, private HEIs in particular, while at the same time also being very much challenged on the vulnerabilities of students. No? So vulnerability ng mga eskwelahan, hindi lang siya sa struktura, hindi lang siya sa finances, yung vulnerability din ng mga estudyante. If I may share, it was in the last 2 years of the pandemic, a little before that we have had a lot of mental health issues being reported from our students. And surprisingly, not only from our students, but our very own employees, from faculty members to leaders in the schools, and even our teachers themselves. So while students are also expressing their difficulties, we found out in a survey that we actually deployed late 2020 that our faculty members are also highly challenged. So when they were placed and stuck in their homes because of the pandemic, these vulnerabilities have actually increased. So ang mga kandidato, these are things that they nitpick, no? They cherry pick kung ano lang yung advocacies nila. But a comprehensive program for the education sector, particularly for private higher education institutions, are not very clear. And why do I emphasize on private higher education institutions? Because for the longest time, 30, 50 years or even more, private higher education institutions in the country have led the education forward, no? The education sector forward. Aside from SUCs or the UP, for example, aside from UP, private educational institutions have actually mustered the courage to break frontiers so that the Philippines will really have a mark in the region like ASEAN or even beyond, but really putting quality in the education that we produce. So perhaps candidates will look into training of employees. That would mean non-teaching and teaching staff of private higher education institutions, pouring in research funds. I would like to emphasize more generously research funds to private educational institutions, because now it's easier for SUCs to actually access research funds. It's very easy because they have BIR, or they have Department of Budget and Management. But since we are out of the loop, it's very difficult. We need some government partners to do that. So support for that, funding support for that, and mental health policy for schools. We have a mental health law, but our mental health law is partly advocacy. It does not in any way prescribe that schools should have, especially higher education institutions, should have psychologists in place to care for our students. Because with the education reform, we have to expect a totally different profile of students. And a little bias with the education reform, the study of the 1987 Philippine Constitution had not been given so much premium. It is downgraded to senior high school. Question is, what about in college? What about in tertiary education? Do we not talk about the value of the political landscape via the 1987 Constitution? we have pockets of discussions in the university about that. That there should be discussions of the 1987 Constitution. It should be mandatory at the tertiary level. So we have a whole lot of issues, but I think those can be prioritized by our candidates.
Thank you, Ma'am Brenette. Very loaded, no? And I think maraming nabanggit si Dr. Rosalina and Dr. Brenette about interventions and observations coming from the level of the institutions and especially the private educational institutions. And there are already clear interventions, adjustments. But when it really comes to policies of the government that affect the institutions, di ba? It's a matter of negotiation talaga. And sometimes nakakapag-concern, especially when we know that problems exist, diba? Like specific problems exist, but we are not sure if yung policies ng government ay directly nakaka-address dun sa mga problems na yun. Or if nauunawaan talaga nila yung complexity ng problem. Since ngayon nga, parang hindi sa atin, hindi malinaw kung ano ba yung kung nakakatulong ba yung current, diba, mga policies nila sa ating mga institutions. And napansin ko rin kanina talagang marami sa mga issues na yon bumababa. Although lahat naman ng members ng society apektado, pero bumababa talaga sa mga students, 'di ba? As in curious ako kung ano talaga yung direct experience. Although sabi ni Miss Alay kanina hindi niya ma-represent yung students na lahat, 'di ba? But I trust in your experience as a leader, 'di ba? To express kung ano nga ba yung pulso ng students when it comes to issues. And I also understood kanina na sinabi mo, may ginagawa rin on the level of the student leaders body, di ba? Na intervention. But what are policies do you think ng government ang pwedeng makaapekto pa sa wellness ng students and your development? Go, Miss Ali.
Ano po, I think a lot of it was mentioned naman by Miss Barton and Miss Abrenica, but then to emphasize talaga, one issue kasi yung na-notice ko since the start of the pandemic is also yung pag-decrease talaga ng number of enrollees. Makikita sa numbers, makikita din namin as students kasi yung course ko nga, like 40 students lang kami sa isang block nung first year, tapos ngayon naging 22 na lang kami. So if if that's almost half of our block. So if that reflects in all other courses, especially for those with several students, ang laki-laki ng percentage ng students na nawawala. Then 2% lang to provide more context. These are some of the reasons that I heard from my fellow students kung bakit sila na hindi na nag-enroll sa San Carlos, for example. First of all is yung in Region 7, San Carlos, I would like to say is prominent talaga. So marami akong classmates na iba't ibang region galing. So marami sa kanila yung parents naging concerned na unstable yung situation sa COVID. So kung mag-i-enroll pa sila ng schools from other regions, ano yung mangyayari? What are the logistics? So yun yung naging concern nila. So second is, of course, financial problems. That's why a lot of students are asking for economic support, not even just those in public schools, even us in private schools. I myself have a scholarship, but I don't think the scholarship, the grant that I'm receiving from scholarship is enough to fund my education, even despite the online setup. So a lot of my classmates are working, they're juggling work and school. Others are stopping school in order to work, to support their parents kasi marami na sa kanila na nawalan ng trabaho. Tapos may narinig din ako from different classmates of mine who stated na they don't feel like schooling online is worth paying for. Mas gusto pa nilang magtrabaho na lang, makakontribute sa parents nila pag magbantay sa mga brothers and sisters nila para makahelp sa parents talaga. And I admire how our department has given us extensive simulations talaga. They've the teachers were really creative talaga, especially at the start of the pandemic, to give us alternative activities that we could do at home. Pero sa course talaga namin, lab heavy. So yung education na nakukuha namin from the lab is really different from what we're experiencing online. So makakasympathize din ako for fellow students of mine who would think na hindi ganun ka worth mag-spend ng money for online na education, lalong-lalo na kung nawalan pa ng trabaho yung parents nila. Tapos yung additional cost pa for gadgets that they would need. Other students, other classmates of mine, other org members of mine have to move to other cities every week, magpupunta sa ibang city para lang maka-access ng internet connection, ganon. So one policy, or could be considered policy, but one need for support talaga is economic support, either financial aid or make what I've been hearing from my classmates is meron bang mga study now pay later na programs that are accessible to students. Kaya even I myself with a scholarship, it's not enough, so I would like kind of options that are like that na mas accessible sa amin, i-endorse, i-market talaga sa mga students na options that we could have in order to continue schooling ngayon. Kasi yung nakikita ko ding problema is marami akong classmates na nag-stop nag-enroll or nag-move to another school. Tapos yung mga nagsa-stop talaga ng pag-enroll, nako-concern ako kung ano pa ba yung incentive nila sa pagbalik. For example, if they're able to find na jobs that could earn them money, what incentive do they have to go back to school when, for example, we're transitioning to the face-to-face na setup? They don't know. Even I, who's continuing schooling right now, I am uncertain of what's going to happen kind of for transitioning towards the face-to-face na classes. And I'm sure institutions are also kind of uncertain pasad. Then add to that, there were institutions in Cebu that were already ready for face-to-face na classes sana, pero nadamay pa sa bagyo na they had to start all over again. So to make this short lang, yun yung unang-una, yung economic support that's made available, accessible, and marketed to students talaga, brought to the students so that they would know what options they would have, and so ma-encourage din silang mag-continue ng school. And then another thing is, of course, mental health support. We're saying kanang proactive na mental health support from institutions and even from kanang school councils, like magkumustahan, there are webinars that are being held, but I don't think a lot of the students are really kanang interested in and joining these webinars, kasi kung hindi siya magiging talagang mafo-forward talaga na may web, if it's optional, for example, the students would rather rest, for example, or would rather do other schoolwork, so maybe there could be other venues we could explore for mental health support. Mag-share lang ako, kada enroll nga namin, yung tigi-enroll na period, magjo-joke kami sa mga friends ko na ano pa ba mag-enroll pa ba tayo ngayon na semester, like kaya pa ba ng brain natin, kaya pa ng spirit, ganun. Pero they're jokes, but they're rooted heavily in kanang true issues talaga. Marami sa amin na yung nag-work at nagsuschool, those of us who have lost kanang family members due to the COVID pandemic, those of us who simply dahil lang talaga na-overwhelm sa change in the situation, nawawala yung mga moments na kumakain kayo pagkatapos ng exam, ganun. The contact between students is lessened talaga, and it's limited to the online na setup. So I would imagine na that's even worse for younger students, kay social interaction is really important talaga for younger students, right? So one long-term siguro na policy would be to really improve COVID-19 pandemic response din, kasi a lot of us want to go back to face-to-face na classes, and we would want to prepare now for transitioning towards face-to-face na classes again, so that makabalik pa yung pwedeng bumalik mag-school, at saka hopefully a better normal siguro from the current situation that we have. So yun lang po for now.
Wow. Chat kami ni Say privately, and per se, it's overwhelming in a sense, just listening to what students are going through. And Save and I were saying a lot of social issues have actually been highlighted already just by sharing what you're doing to struggle through the education system. People have to work, right? That means grabe yung job security. mental health concerns and the stresses outside, that clearly shows na hindi talaga ano yung ano natin, no, environment in our schools. And even the idea of a COVID response, tama eh, it took us 2 years to be more confident to open up schools, no, over time. And it has a lot to do with management, no, and that's really concerning. Thank you so much, Ali. Sabi ko nga kay Save, if I was a student during this time, I may be one of those people na nagsabi, stop muna. Di ako alam mo yan, like, I think it can get so overwhelming. So thank you, Ali, for really sharing. And I guess that transitions well, no? Maybe I'd love to hear from our ano naman. No? So we've seen how complicated education is, and it's its complications, and the invitation is, can our government leaders and the one who's running for position understand, right, and really address the concerns. Sa inyo naman po, what are the top issue for you, no, that is not educational but a critical social issue that you feel is very uniquely in your province, maybe in the region, in Region 7? Maybe you have some highlights, a uniquely Cebuano or Bohol issue that we're seeing in Region 7. We can start with Dr. Barton, the top, para sa iyo, top social issue for you that needs to be talked about.
So in line with non-education issue, I think it's still related to that, no, to education issue, now that we are experiencing now, aside from health and wellness of the students, and the problem also on the effect of Typhoon Odette. Because actually the schools are already preparing, no, last year for the application and the try for face-to-face classes. So we focus on our surveys, applications, and then preparations in the physical plant, preparation of the teachers, and of course simulation to other schools, and the sharing also in our meetings. We were learning from each other. However, now after December 16, so there was a shift of priority. So instead of supposedly the focus na is the preparation for the face-to-face, there are some already institutions whose concern is for recovery. No? So supposedly ready na ang mga facilities, no, for the face-to-face, and hopefully that mental health problems, particularly of the younger ones, because they were expressing really that they want to meet their classmates for socialization, they want to play, and so on. Mostly it's in the elementary that we have smaller, no, size of enrollment because they need guidance. And when we go to ODL, also online distance learning, they also need their parents supposed to be with them. And that is why some also of the parents opted to transfer the public school because they only have the module. So with the modules, they can do that now some other time and not during the scheduled synchronous and asynchronous online lessons. Now, so going back with that, so now mostly, especially in Bohol and also even in Cebu. Now, in Cebu, it's more of the city, Mandaue, Lapu-Lapu, and southern part of Cebu. Here in the northern part, it is until Compostela, now that we were really experiencing heavy destruction, no, in terms of our facilities. But from our place, Carmen, until, no, because we had experienced also before, so not much. So that is one concern. And in line with that, now with the government, of course, in Cebu, for example, so we can see all over the newspaper and videos that our dear governor is already releasing funds, no, as assistance, not to education sector, but to those, no, who have experienced problems in terms of course, pabahay and all those materials for housing, no, for Sigla Sugbo, no, and other aspects on that matter. Even before during the time of the pandemic, the programs are more of course, in the public schools, we understand, no, because they are directly connected to the Department of Education. So they have several support, no, from the government. But from us, that's it. So during the pandemic and also now, I haven't, no, received any, no, as of the moment yet. There are plans, they said, no, because it is done by batch, but majority are saying not yet. But we would like to thank CEAP, no, especially in the region, CEAP, SEPA, CESPA, and of course our council, and from the national, we have received assistance, no, for those who were affected. In Bohol, we have also heard that there are NGOs, no, like Chuchi Foundation and other organizations who are also assisting them, though it's not enough, no, the assistance that they are giving, but at least no, they have started already helping the different institutions. So maybe in Cebu soon, we will have the assistance from our governments in line with the implementation of our curricular activities in school. So far, that's the highlight, no, for the concern. And the second that they have pointed out is the cry for good governance and election concerns, because that is related to responding the first concern that we have. Thank you.
See? Could we call the next one? Baka si Ms.
Yes.
Brenette, kayo naman po, top issue for you that needs to really be,
Actually, na-mention na ni Dr. Barton ang good governance, but very specific to Cebu, at least for Metro Cebu, is really the problem of urbanization. And this is very much related as well to good governance. We would like to emphasize the voices from Cebu is really voices from a rapidly urbanizing context. Urbanization is happening everywhere in the country. We have established economic zones, and definitely it will yield to urbanization. But although there are positives about urbanization, there are also a lot of negatives about urbanization. For one, traffic congestion in Metro Cebu had become terrible. And I think the last 2 years na nagka-pandemic, nakapagpahinga ang aming mga kalsada at aming mga baga, no, out of traffic because people are in their homes. Aside from traffic, but we are starting to have a pre-pandemic condition in our roads now. Another effect to that is kahit walang bagyo, kahit hindi pa dumating si Odette, ulan lang, baha na ang Metro Cebu. And there are pockets of flash floods going around or going on elsewhere, not only just in the city center, but these are all because of urbanization. The need for our area to actually accommodate more investors, opening up the economy, and urbanization is not only, I think, of the present. This is the trajectory of Cebu even 20 years before. So if you can just imagine how congested Cebu is. In fact, because of the pandemic, parang naging ghost town ang Cebu bigla because people are going either inside their homes or going back to their homes. No? Yung migration issue ng Cebu is very real. No? We're like New York na pag gabi walang tao pero pag umaga parang the country is very much alive. And that is true for Cebu. And this is very much related also to security issues. Security in terms of physical security. During the start of this current administration in 2016, parang nagtago lahat ata ng mga snatcher at saka hold-upper because of the 6-month threat, no, on war on drugs. But you still see pockets of criminalities, crimes going around. So security in terms of physical security, in terms of crime, at security in terms of the economy, yung job tenure. Are people really experiencing and building their careers for good, or are people still threatened by job insecurity? Especially for Cebu, that we have a lot of BPO companies, yung ilang buwan or ilang taon lang they can stay and not be that permanent for them. So ang daming effect ng urbanization sa Cebu. Ano bang relasyon ng issue ng urbanization sa kabuuan, no, ng Cebu at saka ng education sector? Especially for USC that we are in the heart of the city. Our location is in the main highway of the city. So traffic congestion is really hellish for us. Sorry for the term. Transferring from one campus to another actually allows us to allot an hour or an hour and a half for our students and faculty members. That's pre-pandemic. Now that people are going back on the roads, we will experience even more traffic. So may effect siya sa institution, may effect siya sa buhay ng ordinaryong tao, may effect siya sa kabuuan ng pamamahala ng Cebu. That's why I'd like to connect it back to good governance. Because at the end of it all, urbanization will never be a problem. It should even be a precursor of development. But with poor governance and with poor leadership, you expect the least of development. Rather, you expect the worst to come. And for Cebu, Metro Cebu is very critical. Dapat ang mga leaders ng Metro Cebu, LGUs, Cebu City, Mandaue, and all the rest from Karkar, from the south to Danao City of the north, should all be talking about coordination and collaboration. Fortunately, that's a challenge here because they speak the same language, but they don't want to understand each other. So it is really making so much of a problem. We hope that this election will help facilitate a better choice of leaders who can really level-headedly talk to each other and really address the problems of Metro Cebu and Cebu as a whole.
That's an amazing run through, no, Ms. Abrenica. Urbanization, the great problem. Here din po, no, since level 1, you can feel it, as in the traffic is totally back. The MRTs are full. The bus lines are super long again. No? And kita talaga yung problem na yan. But thank you for highlighting that. And I think it's a great thing, no, when you highlighted the idea of, even when people talk about elections and electing leaders, which leaders will be open to collaborate with neighboring cities, right? Just because the pandemic kind of showed us, it doesn't choose boundaries, right? Especially in metro areas. Hindi mo naman pwede sabihin, uy, taga Manila lang kami or taga Cebu lang kami, tapos kayo bahala dyan sa ano, di ba? It doesn't make sense, right? And I think that's why I it's great that you raised that. And I hope if there are people here who are listening na influential, kausapin niyo po yung mga government leaders, yung mga tumatakbo, no? Mag-usap po tayo in how we are going to build Metro Cebu that way. Great. And I say, Ali, maybe for you, one top issue that you feel really, really needs to be talked about this coming elections.
One po, interestingly po, yung nag-ask ako ng mga fellow students ko kung ano yung feeling yung issue sa Cebu City, na-mention talaga yung yung centralization ng urbanization dito sa Cebu at yung progress dito lahat na pupunta, kaya yung mga tao pumupunta dito, dumudumog dito, yun ba yung tamang term, kaya nagkaka-traffic. Tapos yun nga, yung mga classmates ko na need ng infrastructure siguro for support educationally, kailangan pang pumunta sa city para lang maka-access ng internet, for example, maka-access yung ibang lugar, wala pang electricity, nauuna talaga yung city na mag-recover galing sa typhoon. So yun, naging talking point din yun namin na yung centralization ng progress nandito talaga sa Cebu. So mas nice siguro kung ma-distribute para ma-alleviate din yung ganun na mga problems dito. Pangalawa is related din sa disaster risk reduction response kasi out of personal experience, a few days after nagbagyo, we live in an area in Cebu nga nasa center talaga kami na near an area na malaking road, may 6 lanes doon na talaga maraming mga cars na nagpa-pass by, pero after 3 days ng bagyo, wala kaming na-notice na clearing operations galing sa government. So yun, I don't know gaano ka-prepared nung panahon na yun or in the kanang wide scale, may nababasa kasi ako na yung sa scale ng typhoon, like maliit lang talaga yung casualties compared sa expected, pero on the ground, like as a personal experience, after 3 days, ang dami ng basura sa road. So yung mga, for example, may mga fire truck na naghahatid ng tubig sa iba't ibang communities galing sa mga fire hydrant. Tapos, hindi sila makadaan kasi something as simple as cleaning the garbage kanang near sa road, hindi magawa. So, paano na lang yung mga malalaking bagay? Tapos yung mga poste natumba pa. So walang nagbantay, walang nag-clear ng poste. Maririnig mo na lang na, hala, may nagnakaw na ng cable, may nagnakaw na ng transformer. So ano, i-exacerbate pa yung problem ng electricity kasi nga walang immediate na response for clearing. Something as simple as clearing, may malaking effect na towards kanang people that's experiencing the effect of kanang the typhoon. Tapos may na-notice na ako na isang fire hydrant nag-share iba't ibang barangay, like ang layo ng barangay na to, bakit nandito yung fire truck niya, bakit na bakit siya umabot pa dito para magkuha ng tubig. So mga simple na things na ganun na pwedeng ma-improve, like infrastructure wise, response wise immediately after mag-typhoon, baka pwedeng ma-improve sa local governments. Tapos ito, hindi ko na-mention kanina, pero education-related, nakalimutan ko ma-mention, amendments to the K-12 curriculum. Yun yung parang interested talaga ako kasi we're seeing na there's the first batch na of graduating students na for this semester or the next semester, I'm not quite sure. Tapos, may mga classmates ko, may mga concerns din. For example, like at the start of the, prior kami nag-college, naging concern din yung with the K-12 program, pagdating ng college, marireduce yung workload, marireduce yung financial na load din sa parents kasi yung mga subjects doon na kailangan sana sa college ma-apply for senior high school. So I would like future leaders to kanang sort of assess kung naging effective ba yun, especially on the national level, kung ano yung naging kung may coordination ba between basic education na sectors and also kanang higher na education sectors with regards to the curriculum for K-12. So in-insert ko lang yun kasi nakalimutan kong mention kanina related to education issues. Then of course, lastly, COVID pandemic response, vaccination has been kanang proven to be effective kasi makakita natin na nagla-lessen talaga yung cases as vaccination efforts increase. Pero may feedback din akong naririnig from people na, for example, local government units have to have a consistent messaging na with regards to vaccination. Okay, for example, you're hearing some local government officials na bago lang nag-first dose, ganun. So ako, as a constituent of the city or of the province, magiging reaction ko nga, siya nga, as a leader, hindi ngayon pa nagpapavaccinate or ganun. With reason naman, pero as from someone from the outside looking in, masasabi kong bakit naman ako magkaka-interest kung ngayon din lang naman siya So there needs to be consistent messaging talaga from local government units para maengganyo yung mga taong magpa-vaccinate at finally maka face-to-face na talaga tayo na klase ngayon. So those are some of the issues that were circulating among students and that I heard from, and even from my own parents, that they wanted to bring up during the election po.
Thank you so much, Ali. And actually, we're seeing some studies on the K-12 right now kasi di ba yung DepEd was forced to reduce the number of competencies and everything, no? So it kind of told us, baka pwede pala magturo with less, and we just focus in very critical areas. So yeah, but thank you for that, Ali, no? Well, we're moving towards the last part na talaga ng conversation natin, no? And Cebu will basically be asking the questions for that. No?
Siguro just parang konting summary lang, no. Ito yung narinig ko na yung mga top issues ay sa education sector, two levels, no, systems and content. Systems yung more on the management of resources, private public relationship, and then yung sa content more on the development, 'di ba, ng curriculum, development ng research, 'di ba? And then dun kanina yung outside the education sector, but connected din naman sa mga nangyayari sa education ay una nakapansin kong theme yung rehabilitation work talaga, no? In terms of response to crisis, pandemic, typhoons, all kinds of crisis, 'di ba? There's a need really to have a clear and even sustainable na response para hindi na paulit-ulit yung issues. And also very unique yung urbanization. Hindi lang naman din sa Cebu, but ibig sabihin talagang most major cities, 'di ba, na nagkakaroon talaga ng ganitong klaseng issue na even if ang drive ay towards economic development, may mga social implications talaga na kailangan i-address. And finally, narinig ko from Dr. Rosalina yung good governance, but narinig ko from the other resource speakers yung mas nuanced nun, 'di ba? Yung pagkakaroon ng efficient, 'di ba? transparent, and even equitable good governance. With all these issues po, ano sa palagay nyo, magja-jump na tayo, ano yung sa palagay nyong connection? Or parang ano yung pakiramdam nyo about sa, if na-address ba itong mga issues na to pagdating sa elections, kung yung mga candidates ba natin, local, national, are talking about or forwarding these issues. And siguro i-connect ko na rin para isabay na yung reflection natin. I did some parang pag chinek ko yung mga info and naalala ko ng 2016 no etong Region 7 and well particularly Cebu and Bohol, nagpanalo sila ng presidente at vice president, 'di ba? Bukod sa ang Cebu ang highest number of voters at talaga, 'di ba? And Bohol very significant number of voters then just below 1 million I think. And then paano sa tingin niyo po yung magiging trajectory ng pagboto ng mga taga Region 7? Well, sabihin na natin mga taga Cebu and taga Bohol sa 2022 elections. Ano yung magiging sabihin natin behavior nila? Ang napapansin po kasi namin ni Karlo talagang maraming boses pero mas mostly politiko, 'di ba? As in etong legislature ng Cebu pumapanig sa isang ganitong kandidato, the governor may preference siya, di ba? Pero ano kaya yung sa tingin yung pulso ng mamamayan mismo, di ba? Kung ifa-follow ba nila yung sinasabi ng mga politiko or meron silang sariling trajectory rin kung paano sila boboto. Siguro simulan natin this time with Ali, if may sagot na siya.
Ano po, I'm not quite sure sa actual numbers po for in terms of sino yung sinusuportahan, kung susunod ba sa in-endorse ng mga local government units. What I can say is, weird yung election ngayon. Parang in terms of, for example, there's an optimistic part of me na nakasali ako ng isang rally ng isang candidate. Tapos nung panahon na yun, nakikita ko na, nung rally, nakikita yung mga classmates ko na hindi masyadong lumalabas sa kanilang bahay, pero ngayon lumalabas. So there's this sort of enthusiasm for the current kanang elections. And there's something that's driving that forward. Possibly galing sa pandemic kasi baka sa iba nagsasawa na sa mga experiences sa pandemic, gustong better governance, mas nagiging vocal. Kaya nga nakikita natin maraming organizations na nag-endorse na talaga ng candidates nila. So that's one thing. And then I've been hearing kahit si Gary V, first time voter after ilang years. So ang galing, ang ganda pakinggan na nagiging involved yung mga tao sa election. Pero there's this trend of misinformation din, yung dapat talagang i-address ngayon na election period. Yeah, I think our other resource speakers can also provide a perspective on that. But as someone online who seeks for conversation, nasa stifle talaga yung discussions. I don't know who's leading or who's not, which surveys to trust, pero makikita ko na, for example, when you're trying to conduct conversations, nalilimit talaga sa, for example, appearance ng politician, nalilimit sa fake news. Nagiging meme na yung respect my opinion, pero I can respect your opinion once it is grounded by fact. We have to ground everything by fact, because when you're making a choice based out of false information, are you really free to make that choice if it's not informed? So yun yung nanonotice ko na parang issue. I don't know how that would translate to numbers, but it worries me to see, it frustrates me to see na may ganitong isyong nangyayari. Hindi lang dito, hindi lang sa Region 7. I would think na it's all over the nation. And part of me believes na the social media platforms should be held to some extent accountable for that said, for allowing false information from going unchecked. So I don't know where the limit is between freedom of speech and also kanang freedom of being informed, the right you have to be informed to make the right decision. So that's something that we should look into, going into the current climate for elections. Yun lang po.
Thank you, Ali. Ma'am Brenette.
Okay. Thank you, Ali. You have your inputs are very refreshing. Okay. Personally, I think this is going around around the conversations of the academics now. That this election is going to be a very critical election. It's going to define so many things. We are at others call it an election crossroads. Why? Because ang dami nangyari before 2022.
Yeah.
The accountability, for example, of politicians have become a 3-year or a 6-year narrative. We make them accountable a few months before the election. But really, accountability is not just prior to the election, in between election, yung tinatawag nating interim time. Meaning to say, when they get elected into office, the first day of their office should be the first day we make them accountable until the next election. But people have not grown maturely on that level. This is general. No? I'm not speaking only of Cebuanos and the like, but this is Filipino trait. Siguro masyado tayong forgiving of our candidates or forgiving of their faults or of people around them, which for me is very critical na role ng education community. How do we sustain that education? It's not changing the narrative because we cannot change facts, right? The only thing we can do is to facilitate that those facts are well sustained and understood across generation. But how critical is this election for me is because one, COVID-19, as I mentioned, actually showed a lot of our vulnerabilities. Vulnerability as a family, as an individual, institutionally, all sectors and the like. Lahat ng baku-bakong desisyon ng administrasyon at ng gobyernong ito nakita. Lahat ng kakulangan no ng services natin nakita. So I would like to believe that voters will be voting independently. Voters will be voting based on their personal experiences. They will not be voting because someone or a candidate actually told them to vote for someone else. This is critical now because the monopoly of information is distributed. Wala nang monopoliya ng informasyon. Kaya lang may challenge tayo for fake information or misinformation. And also, that is a responsibility of everybody else. But since we are in the education sector, ang laki ng role ng mga eskwelahan para magampanan yung pag-educate talaga, pagpasa ng information, ng tamang information. The election crossroads actually forces us individual voters to look at our personal experiences as a gauge to our choice. Ang dami ng mga tao sa Pilipinas siguro na nakaranas ng a member of the family or a friend or someone else's friend na kakilala mo na nagka-COVID, for example, na namatay, for example, na inilibing mag-isa. Is this just because of COVID, a health condition or a health crisis? No, for me, it is a political issue. It is a government responsibility more than anything else. Closing our borders from foreign nationals to come in to prevent the spread of COVID is a call of government. It's not a call of individual experience or ng isang tao. It's a call of government. So governance really matters so much. Now, why am I circling around these things? Because I believe hindi lang siguro halata ng mga tao, but deep inside, we are questioning who to vote. We're not questioning doing a debate among candidates, but we're actually debating with ourselves. With all the choices in front of me, to whom will I give my single vote for each and every position? Ang laki ng responsibilidad na yan. I debate with myself. Sa language ng CEAP, I discern. Although there is community discernment, but at the end of the day, it's still individual discernment. Ano ba yung experiensya ko? Ano yung karanasan ko para sabihin na ito yung iboboto? For Cebuanos, we're labeled to be independent critical voters. Ano bang ibig sabihin ng independent critical voters na Cebuano? It's that capacity to discern. It's that capacity to actually argue even with a candidate that you have preferred. I like this candidate, but I still debate with this candidate because I want to prove to myself that my choice is right. And at the end of this process of choosing who to vote in the May 9, 2022 elections, it's really your conscience and yourself talking. It's really your values and your principles as individuals. Vote buying will always be there. Um, Vote selling will always be there. But being critical and being independent means, I'm not saying that you should accept, I disagree absolutely. But even if people do engage in the affairs of vote buying and vote selling, they still discern. They still ask themselves, will I give my vote to someone who just gave me 100, 200, or even more? Or I still have that ability and that free will to give my vote to whom do I choose?
Thank you so much, Ms. Abrenica. And I guess Dr. Barton, your thoughts then on how elections is?
Yes, as I was listening to them, I was also made to reflect, myself, because I think for the first time, based on my observation, this is the time that there are several who would like to be of service to the country. So imagine there are 10 candidates who are running for president. So in a way, very challenging, that made us also confused, because of several maybe choices. But of course, especially in line with education aspect, this is the time that I can say that it's similar to 1986 EDSA, wherein everybody really are engaged. So last election, we were engaged, but much at this time, we're in schools and churches are also engaged, especially in talking about political education, particularly with the different conversations, debates. There are several, and of course, trainings and other political campaigns on how we are going to vote based on our conscience. But one thing that struck me most, especially with the current CBCP statement given, is the hope that the truth will unite all of us. So maybe they have their own capacity, they have their own platforms, but who can really help our country as of the moment? Now, on the side of education, of course, I have several friends, and of course, I knew also of some school heads who are making their own stand really, as to who to support, for the upcoming election. And during the time when there were campaigns in Cebu, I have seen also some of my friends joining. So that I can say that we are really engaged. So therefore, this particular election on May 9 is really very significant to all of us. So we cannot just afford to stay quiet. And that is the reason why there is also a kind of conflict between the state and also the church, because of insistence that, of course, that is on political aspects, so that's for the state. And the church, they have to, of course, non-partisan, they should not also use whatever teachings and campaigns maybe that they will have in the pulpit. In fact, our dear Archbishop was issuing a message of not using the pulpit for whatever campaign matters. So in a way, this is a very challenging time for us to choose. So maybe one thing that we will be reflecting is what can of course, the schools also do as part of the participation in the education of the voters. As mentioned by Brenette, of course, we have our own choice. In Cebu, based on my observation and of course from the friends, we are divided. If before we are in unison as who to vote, this time we are divided. And that is why there are several who are also very persistent, in the campaign, and also really spreading in a way the good news, who to elect, in the name of truth, of course, of justice, of peace and love, and all the different help in order to educate our conscience, especially of CEAP. We have our statement, and all also activities conducted for moral courage, a call to moral courage for the upcoming election, and the training for those who will go for, there was one particular training, and we have also representatives who have attended that particular training conducted, for voters education. So in a way, all of us really are engaged at this time, and that's a good sign. That's a good sign that whatever decision that we will make, whatever vote that we will have, that would affect us as a people. So with that, we continue to pray, and I like that prayer that we have in CEAP, for the different items included in the prayer, and the rosary inclusion also, because we know that at the end of the day, we need really God, for all these endeavors that we are doing for the election. So may God bless all our voters, especially as they discern, for the upcoming election. And bless also all of us in the schools, for our activities, undertakings for civic and political education. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barton. Mukhang na-highlight na po talaga na grabe yung activity sa loob ng simbahan ngayon. People are very active, discussing and whatnot. No? Well, medyo nasabi na po ata ni Dr. Barton yung closing. Nagkaroon na tayo ng blessings and thank you. Maybe I'll just a quick 30 seconds siguro from Miss Abrenica, and then after that we'll end with Ali's last 30 seconds message to the audience. Sige po. Miss Brenette.
All right. Once again, thank you so much. I would like to invite your viewers to actually stay tuned as well to our Klaro Hayta. The University of San Carlos is organizing Pinili Ay 2022, and one of the activities that we do is to invite in an online candidates forum all candidates. 10 presidential candidates, 9 vice presidential, and all 64 senatorial candidates, and all the party list candidates as well, or groups. We already had 3 episodes since February 18, and all our national candidates will be featured until mid-March and then early April, and all local candidates for Metro Cebu and the province will be featured in April. So that's Klaro Hayta. It's an online candidates forum. We also have our Saturday episode at DYRF Kasing-Kasing sa Balaod. This is our humble contribution to continue educating our public for a better Philippines through the May 9, 2022 elections. Daghang salamat.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And of course, last but not the least, Miss Ali. Yeah.
Hello po. I really appreciate Ms. Abrenica and I think it's a Pulsay na school for that initiative, Klaro Hayta. And that's what I call for other schools to hold forums, especially for new voters like me, provide venues for candidates to present their platforms, to bring it good to the people, and allow the candidates to speak for themselves and what they want to do for us. And then also for each individual voter, according sa language ng CEAP, to discern what your values are and ascertain your values, you're voting for your candidate in accordance with your values. So that's my call for everyone who's a voter like me to hopefully think about that during the elections. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ali. Ikaw, say, may closing words ka ba or babay na ka?
Very thankful ako sa ating resource speakers, kasi talaga na-emphasize nila yung hope ng Kuwentuhang Bayan, di ba? Na mag-bring yung boses ng mga tao sa eleksyon, at yung nilagay ko nga dito parang tao yung maging plataforma, di ba? Hindi yung parang out of nowhere lang manggagaling yung kanilang plataforma. At the same time, yung simbahan at yung ating mga eskwelahan ay maging spaces, di ba, of discernment, spaces of critical discussion, lalong-lalo na sa election at yung mga issues beyond the elections. So yun, Karlo.
So palakpakan naman po natin sa lahat po na nakinig at audience, palakpakan naman po natin our amazing resource persons. Again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Barton, Abrenica, and Ali for that wonderful conversation. Excited na ulit makabisita ng Cebu someday, no, to really see the beauty of the island once more. Again, thank you. Thank you for this conversation, and this is another episode of Kuwentuhang Halalan. So maraming salamat. Thank you. Bye po.
Salamat po.
Thank you.
Palalimin ang kamalayan sa mga isyong napapanahon. Makisangkot at makiisa kasama ang Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan, ang social-political apostolate ng Kapisanan ni Jesus. Ito ang Kuwentuhang Bayan mula alas 11 ng umaga tuwing Biyernes dito lang sa radyo-katipunan 87.9 FM. Dahil naniniwala kami na posible ang isang mas mabuting lipunan at maaari itong simulan sa isang kwentuhan.
Radyo,